more and more stories are coming fast and furious. White House aides are claiming Biden is prone to outburst, angry interrogations behind closed doors, dropping the F-bomb at his staffers. And a lot of the aides say they go out of their way not to meet with him one-on-one. Rather, they take someone with them to avoid these one-on-one meetings, almost like a shield. Now, a lot's been said about his cognitive ability. And I'll have to say this. Having been raised by my grandparents, God rest their souls, my grandmother was a very, very intelligent woman. One of that first wave of females that went to college in the 20s. Very, very academic. Very, very smart. Helped me along tremendously. And she was afflicted with dementia, Alzheimer's. And at the very end, when she was in the home, she didn't know who I was. She was prone to angry outbursts, and I won't get into it in any more detail than that, other than to say she wasn't the person that I grew up with. Now, as I look at Joe Biden, honestly, I see a lot of the same things. And I don't mean that to be ugly, as we say in the South, but descriptive. He goes from hot to cold, on to off in a heartbeat. But with me is Ronny Jackson, member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the great state of Texas, 13th District. He was the former first chief medical advisor to the president under President Trump. Representative Jackson, thanks for being along.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate being here.
Oh, man, are they simply saying in the White House now what a lot of us have been saying all along?
Well, they are, Rick. Like you'd mentioned, I've been at the White House for 14 years before I came to Congress. I was a physician in the Bush administration for President Bush, for Obama, and for Trump. So for 14 years, I was a White House physician. And, I know exactly what it takes both mentally and physically to do that job. And I've been saying for a long time that Joe Biden's not up for the job, mentally or physically, but, most obviously from a cognitive mental standpoint. But you don't have to be a physician. You don't have to be a former White House physician to see this anymore. Just like you were talking about with your grandmother, there are people all over the country that have seen what it looks like when you have, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or multi-infarct dementia or whatever it is. I'm not giving the guy a diagnosis. I'm not his doctor, but he's got some serious cognitive issues related to his age, and it's just not compatible with being the president of the United States, with being the commander in chief and our head of state. It's going to get us in trouble. He was just overseas at the NATO summit, and he was in Finland at meetings there, and it's not just embarrassing, but it's dangerous for our country. It doesn't inspire confidence in our allies, and it doesn't inspire fear or pause in our enemies. And it's basically inspiring and emboldening our enemies. And I think that, it's not good for the country. And, like you said, we're not trying to be mean to anybody, but, there's certain jobs that you just, you need to be 100%. And President of the United States is one of those jobs, and he's not up for it anymore. So I don't know what's going to happen at the White House. I think that I've been saying a long time, and people are starting to say, I hear people talking about it all the time now, he won't be the nominee, and I think that's true. I don't think he'll be the nominee because I think that they can only hide him for so long, and they've been doing their best to hide him, but, it's going to be harder and harder as the campaign season kicks off, and he has to actually run for president to keep him hidden, and I think that they're realizing that now, and they're trying to figure out what Plan B is.
No, I think you're 100% on the target. I think they've been trying to hide him since day one during the campaign. And let me ask you this, and I have no reason to think you have the answer. I don't believe that he's coming up with this decision-making on his own, these ideas on his own, this whatever it happens to be, dealing, as you mentioned, with foreign allies. Do we have any idea who's actually running the show?
No, I mean, we don't, and that's the sad part. Initially I kind of thought, and I think early on, I think there were people like Ron Klain and Susan Rice, that were pulling a lot of the strings, but they're both gone now. I don't know who stepped up to do that, but I think the danger here is we have a whole lot of mid-level staffers in the West Wing that control access to him and to people on his staff to some extent. And it's just incredible what you can get away with if you're the gatekeeper for the President of the United States. I've seen firsthand how much authority those people have. Because you really can't you can't get your message through and influence decision making if you can't even get to the president. And I just think that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and we don't know who's making those decisions. But it's not the person that was elected to be president. It's not Joe Biden. It is it's unelected people in the White House that they're there because of the fact that he's in the Oval Office gives them their power, their authority, and their influence, and they'll do anything to keep that. And that's why they're desperately trying to hide him and cover up for him. And you can see the incompetence that he surrounds himself with his press secretary and his cabinet secretaries. And
right.
Yeah, so it's just, it's not good.
I was reading a report out of the White House, and, none of us are pure as the driven snow and those without sin cast the first stone and all of that. But this coming out of the White House, they say, and using their words, not my own, he's prone to dressing down his staff, including profane condemnation, like, GD, how the F don't you know this? Don't effing BS me and get the F out of here. I don't care if you're prone to swearing or not. That's the President of the United States.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And like you mentioned, that happens a lot of times. It goes hand in hand with some of the cognitive decline. And I think a part of it is a defense mechanism of, not really, feeling like you're in control of what's going on, or do you really know what's going on, and confusion and being lost and stuff. And it's a way to cover up for some other shortcomings that come along with your inability to process stuff because of your cognitive issue. I think that's true. I think that was a leak from the White House, which says a lot. We got people from the inside that are leaking that out. But I also think that the press still tries to cover up for him. I was reading an article. I don't remember if it was the New York Times or the Washington Post. I think it was the New York Times, where they were highlighting, when this story first got leaked about him striking out, and verbally abusing his staff. They were actually trying to make it sound like it was a good thing. They were trying to put a spin on it, like, look, this shows that the president is in control of what's going on, and he's and they even made the comment, which was ridiculous, that some of the staff like it because they know that he, I was like, are you kidding me? It's just like if that were anybody else other than the president of the United States on a Democrat that the press has been feverishly trying to cover up for 3 years now. If that were anybody else, that would be a horrible story, and they're trying to spin it into something positive. But I think that the press in general, that's not going to last very much longer. I think that they too are starting to question whether or not they can continue this for the remainder of this campaign season, and but certainly when it comes where he's going to get to a point where he has to go head-to-head with Trump or whoever the Republican nominee is, and that's not going to go well for him.
No, I think you're right. If there's one thing you can rely on, it's the press is not going to throw themselves under the bus. Talking with Ronny Jackson, a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 13th District here in the great state of Texas, former first chief medical advisor to the president under President Trump, talking about what seems to be, I started to see what seems to be an increasing problem, and I don't know if the problem is increasing or that just more and more people are aware of it. Representative, let me ask you this, and in no way, shape, or form are you giving a diagnosis, but does it appear that the cognitive ability of this president is declining, and these erratic tantrums where he strikes out in anger to mid and lower level staffers, does it appear that he's getting closer to what you and I would understand as dementia or Alzheimer's?
Absolutely. I think that's you can't argue against that very effectively. this is a man, that we've got 40 years of tape on. He's been in politics his entire life, and there's just countless video clips of him. He's always been prone to gaffes, but these aren't gaffes anymore. He's lost, he's confused. He doesn't know, who he's talking to, where he's going. These are different than the typical Joe Biden gaffes that that people may have been accustomed to over the last 40, 50 years. And I'll be honest with you, I was on active duty. I was the director of the White House Medical Unit, and I was the physician of the president during the Obama administration as well. Bush, Obama, and Trump. And during the 8 years that I was in the Obama administration, I oversaw the medical team that took care of President or Vice President Biden at the time, and I wasn't involved in his medical care, so I can speak freely about speculate on some of the medical issues here because I did not have anything to do with his medical care, but I was in close proximity to him on a regular basis and to the medical team that took care of him. They actually worked for me, and I don't remember everybody ever saying anything about his temper, about him striking out, about him cursing out his staff or anything. So I think a lot of this stuff is new. I think the confusion and stuff that we see is new. He's got all the physical signs and symptoms that go along with it as well. The signs in particular where he shuffles when he walks, he slurs his speech. He's got kind of that dead blank stare where he just kind of stares off into space. A lot of things like, that we talked about earlier that people that have been around family members or friends that have Alzheimer's and multi-infarct dementia and Parkinson's and things of this nature, they're familiar with these physical manifestations as well as the cognitive stuff. So I think that something is happening. I think it's happening pretty rapidly. I tell people all the time, Joe Biden's not a fine wine. He's not going to get better with time. Any of these cognitive issues that are going on right now are just going to continue to get worse. That's the natural course of any of these diseases. Is it starts off and you have more good days than bad days, and as time goes on, you have more bad days than good days, and there's good times of the day and bad times of the day. And I think that's what the staff at the White House is struggling with right now. When can they find a window of opportunity where he seems to be kind of cognitively with it and roll him out and get him to say something to the press or parade him around a little bit and then get him back in before he decompensates again. So it's not a good situation for our country to be in, but that's where we stand right now.
Ronny Jackson, member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 13th District here in Texas, former first chief medical advisor to the president under President Trump and Bush and all the rest. I appreciate your candor and being so open and honest because I know a lot of people feel this way, but they're very reluctant to say it out loud, and ignoring a problem doesn't help solve it.
That's absolutely right. We can't afford to ignore it anymore, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize that.
Representative Ronny Jackson, thank you so much. I appreciate it.